All right, we've reached Tribulation, day 121, and the world continues to spiral down into chaos. Had a pretty good weekend. Had a birthday party for my brother's wife who just turned 50. So it was good to see, a lot of friends and family. And, if anything, there's I don't know how you would exactly explain it, but, when you try and kind of touch base talking about the world, it's kind of interesting, but most people just want to kind of live in a delusion, don't want to acknowledge that crap is happening. And my purpose wasn't to bum everybody out. We were celebrating something really positive. But at the same time, you just care for people, and you kind of want people to understand how their lives might be affected. So, I think there's a lot of us out there where, the people closest to us, especially family members, it's almost the most disheartening because, communicating or trying to discuss what might be going on, it's very difficult. And, once again, people would rather just, stick their heads in the sand, continue on. Because if your life's going good, you don't want to hear about any kind of tribulation. But anyway, kind of getting back on that front, one of the two sinister forces that are at play right now, and I'm continually saying, there's good and evil on both sides of any conflict at this point, because it's really the rule by secrecy, the upper elites. Those are the people manipulating everybody else and forming the deception. But on a religious level, I think it's out there. Here in America, theoretically, we tolerate any and all religions, and then we have this, quote, separation of church and state. And some people take it to the extreme, especially the atheists and a lot of liberal types. And what you find in America is there's kind of like, some would call it a war or a battle, kind of against Christianity to get it out of our government, any shape or form of it, from saying the Pledge of Allegiance to school prayer. People have this view of like there should be no mention of God at all, especially the Christian view of God. And then at the same time here in America, there's kind of like a cover-up, like, oh, we don't want to offend Muslims, like whatever you do when we talk about terrorism, don't mention the Islamic faith. You could talk about soldiers falling and America coming together, but don't mention what we're actually fighting against. And I will agree with one thing, the vast majority of Muslims are probably okay people, but anytime you have a pyramid of power, there's somebody at the top that's manipulating everybody down below. And just like in the Christian faith, a couple hundred years back, they had the Crusades. That was, either the Catholic Church or the power structure of the kings, where they would get all the people mobilized to march on Jerusalem and kill any and all Muslims they found in their path in the name of God. But that's still happening to this day, and that's kind of what's happening with the Islamic faith. Is, even though a lot of Muslims would say, hey, we've got a religion of peace, that's a big deception. And it's crazy, because here in America, it's like if you say anything against Muslims, it's like, you're some kind of racist hater. And in the Muslim community, they feel that their faith and their laws kind of supersede and are above and beyond anything that America has. And there's other religions in our country that are kind of along those lines, kind of like the Quakers and whatnot. But in the long run, religions have to find a way to assimilate and work within the structure of American laws. But with the Islamic faith, they kind of want to push their laws into our courts, and they want that no matter what their like their customs are, wearing burqas and headscarves, they feel like it doesn't matter that it may affect America's security, and companies or whoever may have policies where they're like, hey, we don't want people walking around where all you can see is their eyeballs. And yet, the argument is made that people that say that, they're a bunch of racists, or they're being biased and bigots against the Islamic faith. And yet, outside of America, all across the Islamic world, all across the Middle East, countries that are have an Islamic radical theology, a tyrannical theology in place, a pyramid of power. Just like the Catholic Church for centuries was corrupt as could be, because it was a power where they would dictate, hey, God wants this and God wants that, and they'd go about killing people, torturing people, and doing all just fear. Because that's how they control people. And even, tyrannical forces, whether it's a dictator or a religious leader or a king. I just watched a movie last night called Ironclad, talking about the Magna Carta and King John. And in the movie, King John's just like, fear is the only answer. That's the only way we maintain our power structure. And, the only fear we have is the fear of fear itself. But all these Islamic countries are headed towards a Islamatization of the government, where there is no separation of church and state, where an Ayatollah, which is basically like a pope or a priest, is telling you how to live your life, and if you dare break any of their rules, they will deal out punishment directly from God to you. But that's what's forming in the Middle East, not democracy, not this lovey-dovey thing. And they fool the people into thinking that, hey, if we have one world that is ruled by the Islamic faith, there'll be peace and everyone will love each other. But they kind of don't really say, part of doing that is we got to kill anybody that isn't part of our faith, And that's why I think World War III is coming. And, in those countries, they don't tolerate or extend friendship to any of the other faiths, Christianity or the Jewish faith. People are persecuted, and you're not allowed to be full citizens. So, to me, it's like, why don't people wake up and see the hypocrisy and the craziness that here in our country, they're demanding one thing, and in the rest of the world, they don't extend that same courtesy to anybody. But, that's the crazy world we're living in. And, of course, we had our big speech by our President Obama, basically doing a bunch of jibber-jabber, promising the world. Everything, of course, sounds good to the Kool-Aid drinkers. They're like, oh, it was the greatest speech ever, But, Obama, he's just a puppet. And, the deception is there. Once again, everything he proposed is just a Band-Aid. It's a fake, it's a con job, it's not solving anything. Obama's whole position is every time he says, hey, Republicans got to put country first, they got to stop playing politics, and yet everybody knows that's all Obama does is play politics, and everything that he's doing is just to help him get reelected. And if you look at his plan, if you can actually see through the haze or step back from the tree and see the forest, his plan in a nutshell is, hey, let's keep spending money on unsustainable programs, and as far as cutting or trying to solve the problem, we'll do that 10 years down the road after I'm out of office. And, it's just amazing because it's the ultimate height of hypocrisy that we have our, blamer in chief, where the cornerstone of his whole presidency is, for 3 years, he's been like, hey, I'm not at fault, it's all George Bush's fault, I inherited a mess. And yet, the cornerstone of his whole American Jobs Act is to pass the buck to the next generation and to the next idiot that gets elected president. He's going to pass them a disaster because he's not paying for anything. Not while he's president. But you know, it's a big deception, and people, I don't know why they can't see it, man. And of course, you know, I think there's even a deception, you know, as far as what's happening in the world. You know, when it comes to the 2012, the star alignments, the comets, the space station, NASA, I don't believe none of it. It's all big cover-up, and, you know, something's coming. You know, even today, you know, they're talking about that the tectonic plates are shifting, and there's land coming up in the Black Sea over by Russia. And of course, earthquakes have been higher, the solar flares have been going up, and not a peep from the media on any of this comet stuff or Planet X, you know. And you know, I don't know, like, we'll have to see. You know, I'm just monitoring it, but I just, you know, smells of cover up. And of course, the latest bit of news is there was some kind of explosion at a nuclear power plant over in France, and they're saying there's probably a radiation leak. But once again, like Fukushima, it'll be a big cover-up, because the bottom line is it doesn't matter if people, innocent people, get radiated or get sick. You know, just keep them blind, keep them stupid. So, you know, I don't know. You know, if you want real solutions, no politicians are gonna, you know, when they do talk the truth, they get just beat over the head, like saying, hey, we got to change Social Security, or we got to change Medicare. You know, that's the truth, but nobody wants to talk about the truth. And, you know, like Obama saying, hey, we want to sell our stuff all over the world, made in America. You know what? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard of, because the real problem is the rest of the world is using slave labor. You know, when you pay somebody 10 cents an hour, we can't compete against that. There's not going to be any American products being sold anywhere around the world. But you know, not one word in Obama's great speech did he even talk about the fact that it's not a level playing field. And all the trade agreements he's talking about is just going to have more jobs being sucked out of our country. You know, once again, Jeffrey Immelt, the guy he's got in charge of his creating jobs in America, the CEO of GE, is sending all of his jobs over to China. You know, so it's a big joke. You know, I wish things were better and people were telling the truth, but that isn't the way it is. So I'm going to go out there, get my tribulation on, going to confront whatever's in front of me, going to speak truth to power. And you know what? Maybe we can build a force to confront this. You never know. All right, keep on rocking, people. Peace out.